Swanee, God has smiled on the Gators, no question about it.
Okay, so this recording that you're about to hear is my take 2 for this video because I tried to record this last night, but the problem is I made a major mistake in the talking about this video. So that's gonna be another. This is gonna be another attempt. We all know that Billy Napier was the least successful head coach in the modern era of Florida Gators football. He didn't have a single season at Florida where he didn't lose at minimum 4 games. Even in the year that he was fired, he was 3-4. His best record, 8-5, which means his best record included 5 losses. He posted so many negative accolades at the program, it would overextend the narration of this video. And he was fired after the final game against Mississippi State. A day after Florida beat Florida State 40-21, Jaden Ball's historic performance, it was announced that Jon Sumrall was going to be hired to Florida from Tulane. And after his season with Tulane was done, because obviously they made the playoffs last year. Sumrall has a tough schedule ahead of him, but he did do an excellent job of retaining a lot of production to UF's team, meaning returning production, great players, Ball, Jada Woods, Vernell Brown, Dallas Wilson, all those guys, Bryce Thornton, Dijon Johnson. And he put together a staff that has completely re-energized the locker room and the fan base. Rusty Witt has become a fan favorite, the strength and conditioning coordinator. The offensive coordinator hire of Bussner Faulkner has Florida fans salivating. Phil Trotwine, to me, I think has been his best hire of the entire staff, because the offensive line recruiting that Florida has enjoyed over these last couple of months has been the best offensive line recruiting we've seen since maybe the Pouncey days. And on defense, he brought in Brad White from Kentucky, who has experience coaching in the SEC. He retained Gerald Chapman, and he made a lot of hires that I think are hitting their stride before the season starts. We'll see the proof. The proof will be in the film room when the season starts and the games start. So we know that Billy Napier was terrible, and he really didn't do that much at UF. So this video is going to be about what can Jon Sumrall do in year 1 that is better than Billy Napier did his entire tenure. And if you heard that noise, it was because I was grabbing notes I took for this video. So the first thing that he could do is have a 3,000-yard passer. And I'm not talking, when I say things that Sumrall did that Napier didn't do, it could have been easy to say, well, make the SEC title game, make the playoffs, win the national championship. I'm talking about just little things that can show you the improvement in areas that Florida struggled at during the Napier era. So the 3,000-yard passer, Florida has not had a 3,000-yard passer since Kyle Trask in 2020. 2021 was Emory Jones and Anthony Richardson, and then throughout Napier's tenure, he never had a 3,000-yard passer. He came close. Graham Mertz in 2023. Now, when Graham Mertz announced that he was going to transfer from Wisconsin to Florida, I, among other Gator fans, was not excited about it because Graham Mertz didn't look that good in Madison, Wisconsin, was for the Badgers. But he actually played better than what I expected him in 2023. And of all the issues that was with Florida and why they went 5-7 last year, I'm not going to say he played great every single game. I'm not going to say he was phenomenal, but I think he wasn't the majority of the problems. He came close to 3,000 yards. He suffered a shoulder injury that ended his season in the second to last game against Missouri. He had 2,903 yards, 2,903 yards, 97 yards short of 3,000. If he would have finished that game against Missouri, he could have clinched that night. I know he certainly would have gotten it the following week against Florida State that season if he had been able to play. So to have a 3,000-yard passer at UF for the first time since 2020 is crazy when you look at the history of that position at Florida. Spurrier, Warfel, Rex Grossman. I know Rex Grossman didn't really pan out that great in the NFL, but he was a good quarterback at UF, Chris Leak and Tim Tebow. We obviously saw what I just talked about, Kyle Trask. So when Florida has good quarterback play, it's very fun. The school is very fun to watch. Another thing that he could do: go the entire season without an illegal formation on special teams for having more or less than 11 men on the field. How many times did Billy Napier fail to count to 11 when it came to special teams? In the Utah game in 2023, the season opener for that year, he had a play in which only 7 or 8 players were on the football field. Miami last year, it was the same thing. 7 or 8 players on the football field last year. 12 men on the field when in the Tennessee game. When Florida was trying to kick a field goal before halftime, it got negated because there were 12 men on the field for Florida at the time of the field goal. Even in the Tulane, the only bowl win that Billy Napier enjoyed as the UF head coach, he had a penalty where there were 12 men on the field. So every single year there was an issue with getting getting 11 men on the field. Only 11, no more, no less for Billy Napier and the UF special teams staff. And that's bad. If you're a head coach and you can't even get 11 men on the field on a consistent basis, then that means you're going to have a hard time. In a lot of areas outside of that. He even had a bunch of those penalties on defense too. So it would be nice if we can go the entire season without an illegal formation on special teams because of too many men or not enough men on the field for the special teams unit. So no special team miscues would be nice. Finish the season, and here's another thing. Finish the season with a top 50 scoring offense. The last time Florida has had a top 50 scoring offense was 2021, which was Dan Mullen's final year. They were 49th that year, so they barely made the mark. But Billy Napier's entire tenure, he did not have a single season where the offense was ranked above 57th in scoring. But this guy was so committed to being a play caller and so committed to running the offense his way, yet the numbers tell you he needed an offensive coordinator and he just refused to do it. 57th, 59th, 64th, and 111th. Now, I don't know what Georgia Tech's top scoring offense numbers were. The last few years that Buckner Faulkner was there, but I would assume it's certainly better than 111th this past season. I would assume it was a little bit better than 64th in 2024, and I would assume it's a little bit. It could have been a little bit better in 2023, where Florida was 59th. And I'm talking about 2023 because that's when Brent Key took over after they moved on from Jeff Collins. If Florida had a top 50 scoring offense in 2025, Florida would have made a bowl game last year. Because there were only, as bad as their offense was, they were only 2 wins away from bowl eligibility. And I certainly think they would have beaten USF and LSU if the offense had helped their defense out, because the defense did everything they could to help them in those games. What's something else that Jon Sumrall could do that Billy Napier failed to do? How about beat an opponent on the road that finishes with an above 500 record? Billy Napier only had 4 wins on the road. It was a Texas A&M team that finished 5-7 in 2022, a 4-8 South Carolina team in 2023, and not one but two win squads in Mississippi State and Florida State. So the only time he had more than one road victory was when it was against teams that were double digit in the loss category. So if he could so Jon Sumrall simply doing that would be an accolade that Billy Napier never even dreamt of accomplishing. Now here's the road schedule for Florida. Auburn, then on the road at Missouri, then on the road at Texas, and then their final 2 road games are at Kentucky and at Florida State. That's the road schedule, true road schedule, not neutral site. True road schedule. I would say of all the teams on here that would likely finish with winning records, I would say Texas is number 1, Missouri number 2, because I think Eli Drinkwitz has actually done a pretty good job in Columbia, Missouri for the last few years. Texas, Missouri, and then between Auburn and Kentucky, I'll take my chances and say Kentucky, because I don't have Auburn's schedule, and I don't have Kentucky's schedule on here. I don't have Kentucky's schedule or Auburn's schedule lined up, but I don't think Kentucky's schedule will likely be as difficult as Auburn is, because Kentucky more than may or may not have Georgia or Alabama on here. And Florida State, I predicted them to go 7-5 just to be nice, because I didn't want to be like automatically, well, it's Gator fan bias that I picked Florida State to go 5-7. I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt here, but Mike Norvell is a terrible coach, and he might not be there by the time Florida arrives in Tallahassee. He might be fired by the time that game is there. Actually, I think it's more than likely that he'll be fired. So there's a good chance he can check off that box with Texas and Missouri, and maybe Kentucky or Auburn. Obviously, if you win three of these 5 games, you should have a pretty good chance of checking off that box. And I think the best thing that Jon Sumrall could do in his first year, outside of I had a phone call in the middle of that recording, so we were talking about what's the final thing that would be a great thing for Jon Sumrall to do in his first year. So to finish off the video, because I had a phone call, that's why I had to stop that audio for a second. If he were to go undefeated at the Swamp in year 1, that would be a major check off, a major check in the a major feather in his cap, in the eyes of Florida fans. So Florida's home schedule, they have 6 home games this year: Florida Atlantic, Campbell, and then 2 weeks later, they're back at home to face Ole Miss. And then 2 weeks later, they're back at home to face South Carolina. And then after a bye week and the neutral annual Georgia game, they will play Oklahoma. And then 2 weeks later, their senior day is against Vanderbilt. Between these games right here, I think it's more, if I had to pick, if he were to go undefeated on the road or at home, I kind of would take more of my chances at home. Not just because it's the Swamp, but you have FAU and Campbell. That should be 2 automatic wins right there. Ole Miss is going to be tough. Oklahoma is going to be tougher. But South Carolina and Vanderbilt, to me, I don't know what to make of Vanderbilt, because they're not going to have, because Diego Pavia was the heart and soul of that team, and they lost so much, and they typically don't recruit at the level that most other teams recruit at to replenish NFL production that leaves the program. That Vanderbilt won't be bringing back next year. And South Carolina, when it comes to Shane Beamer, he's good one year, and then he's bad another year, and then he's good one year, and he's bad another year. If you look at his last 4 seasons at South Carolina, it's 8-5, 4-8, 9-4, and then last year they were 4-8 again. So it's there's not really any consistency going on with Shane Beamer in that case. It's one good 1 year, bad 1 year, and you don't know which South Carolina team you're gonna get out of him on a year-to-year basis. So if I had to say, would I expect Jon Sumrall to go 6-0 at home or 5-0 on the road? I think it's more likely he goes 6-0 at home. Not that I'm predicting that, but I would say I think that would be a better possibility, because of the 2 non-Power 5 opponents, a Vanderbilt team that's going to be stylistically different than what they've been the last 2 years. South Carolina, because there's a good chance that Shane Beamer could be coaching his last year with the Gamecocks. Ole Miss, because there's no Lane Kiffin. Yes, Pete Golding has some familiarity with the program, but that doesn't mean he's at the level of a head coach that Lane Kiffin is at. And Oklahoma, that's going to be a tough one, especially considering it's right after the Georgia game. So there's a good chance Florida's emotions and physical wear down from that game could carry over into the following week. But I would take my chances on 6-0 at home than I would 5-0 on the road, because Florida plays some very tough matchups on the road, and just the environments that they play on the road, I think, is a little bit tougher. It's a little bit tougher than the road schedule they had last year. You had Auburn on the road. That's a tough environment. Texas, that's not going to be easy. Kentucky has been a house of horrors for Florida for a little bit over half a decade now. And Mizzou is always a wacky game between the Gators and the Tigers. Mizzou Tigers, that is. So that's those are my things that I could say that if Jon Sumrall could accomplish that Billy Napier didn't, that would be great. 3,000-yard passer, no special team miscues, a top 50 offense, beating a above 500 road opponent, and finishing undefeated at the Swamp.